Hi. Okay. Well, here we go. Let's get started. Welcome to United Way's Working Bridges Innovation Lab for the summer. It's August 8th, if you can believe it. I was just telling the team that I'm back from vacation and feeling really rested and fresh. And so I hope all of you have been able to step away from your work and disconnect fully and take a little time to be at your best. So I'm happy to be back. I'm really glad we have a lot of participants today. As you could see from our invitation, we're here today to talk about Vermont's caregiver crisis, which is really a conversation focused on the impact that Vermont's caregiver needs for older Vermonters, aging Vermonters. We have a workforce challenge that many of us are experiencing. I think it's fair to say many people in the room with us today may also be full-time caregivers for a loved one. So I want to lead with that, recognizing some of you might be in the middle of it, right in it, helping take care of your older parents, or maybe a loved one who has disabilities or has to have regular care or maybe 24/7 care. So these are impacting how employees show up at work. It impacts how employees are able to participate in the workforce and the needs that they have, and certainly has come to our attention through resource coordinators that help employees in workplaces. So welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here today with two of our colleagues that are going to be joining us for this really important conversation. We have Christine Wernicke from UVM's Health Network, Home Health and Hospice. She's the President and Chief Operations Officer. And we also have Diane Jones, who's the Palliative and Complex Care Coordinator at Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice. And they'll be taking us through the issue. They'll help us understand the impact. They'll be helping us to think about how we can shape solutions and think about what are the creative ideas that we have to leverage to impact how employees can get what they need as caregivers and still keep good work. So with that, before we start off fully, I just want to give a few program updates from Working Bridges. I'm really excited today. Many of you know that we are embarking on our first shared position with Green Mountain United Way and United Way of Northwest Vermont. We are welcoming our new senior program manager, Maya Hanron. She's with us on the call today. So Maya, if you're there, do you want to say hello?
Can you hear me? I'm new computer as of yesterday, so I haven't figured out the webcam yet. Hi, Diane. Diane's my good friend from outside of work. So
yay! Well,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maya.
I'll get the camera on at some point.
You keep working on that. I'm sure it'll come through at some point. We're really excited that we're at scale and at a time in our development as a program where we need that layer of support for our day-to-day service delivery. So Maya's first day was yesterday. It's amazing that she has her laptop up and going. So we're thrilled, and we're just really excited to be working with Maya, and we look forward to bringing her to the site so you can get to know her well too. You'll be seeing her in the months and years to come. So some other exciting news. We have to talk about this as we keep growing. We have 4 new partners who are with us. Some of them are on the call today. We have Columbia Forest Products, NRG Systems, Cabot Creamery, and new this month, and really launching the 1st of September, Casella. So congratulations to all of you. We're excited to have you on board, excited to bring you into this work. Anyone from Columbia, NRG, Cabot, or Casella want to say hello? I just want to give everyone a chance to say hi. Margot, I see you. Well, I know you're here. Please feel free to pop in the chat if anyone wants to say hello. All right. So another update real quick is that you may see someone behind me as we're talking or having conversation. Ned Castle, our videographer, is here for the FINRA project. So you may catch him taking some shots, and I just want to let you know that he's in the space with me. This isn't my good side, Ned.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. Fine. You could go anywhere you like. But FINRA, so the FINRA project, many of you know, we've been working on a documentary through FINRA, and so that's currently happening. The next update is the United Way Impact Report is coming out very soon, and I wanted to send a special thank you to Michelle Sacco at Food Science for her leadership and helping tell the story of the impact that Working Bridges has for operations and the employees that she helps and works with. So centering our time today, this is our quarterly innovation lab. For those of you who are new, I really want to just center on our purpose and why we come together quarterly. The topics vary, the reasons we come together, the different issues that come up can be very different. However, this space is really meant to be a confidential space for us to work together on some of these really complicated issues that impact our collective workforce. We've talked about things like transportation resources or unmet needs or food resources. Typically, it's a chance for us to come together to learn about an issue, to examine it from different perspectives, to try to talk about ideas, share things that are working. Sometimes we share best practices, or we'll highlight something that a partner's trying that we could either elevate or improve upon or adjust or adapt. So this is a chance for us to think really creatively. So I hope you'll bring your creative brains today. The reason for our meeting today really is, so I'm going to get into some of the information that we were able to share with you to set the stage for why we're talking about caregivers today. I think all of you in this space have worked with employees who've had the demand of providing care to a loved one, whether it was a short-term medical situation where they had to provide care, or maybe it's a long-term care need that has layers and layers to go through. Over time, if I go back in time from when I learned about, when I started doing this work as a resource coordinator, the needs are changing. Employees are coming to their resource coordinator with needs that help people navigate the resources to take care of loved ones. We were able to look at going back to January 2023. This is data from all of the work sites and all of the employees that we worked with, which is about, I think, approximately 1,500 employees, unique employees. And we made 295 unique referrals to services and agencies that provide services and support for older Vermonters, elder care, senior care. And this can be what we found, interestingly, was that healthcare was the number one reason referral. I mean, a lot of employees are looking for help with the healthcare aspect of managing that caregiving responsibility. 154 referrals to services, and you'll see the list of services to the left. And it's anything from resources we can help with, like the resource coordinator can help with basic paperwork, application assistance, advanced directive forms, and planning forms. But a lot of times these are referrals to partners, referrals to services that help people directly. So you'll see referrals to attendant services with Dale, or Department for Aging and Independent Living, Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice, maybe Diane, Social Security Administration. These are just some of the topics employees are trying to navigate. These are the issues that they're trying to get help with. Referrals to the senior hotline are pretty strong, but you can see Medicare as well as the senior hotline are like two of the, oh no, not services for the aging. So AgeWell. So you can see in our region, area agencies on aging and AgeWell are big referrals for us to have specialized information and referral and support. Medicare and Social Security continue to be questions that have come up more frequently. And then second to healthcare, you'll see that financial concerns or financial needs like retirement planning, trying to think about Social Security, connecting on that, or referrals to tax preparation through AARP, which focuses on older Vermonters. So those are just some of the things we could pull from the kinds of interactions resource coordinators are having with employees. There's a big caveat in this data in that we're being very conservative in sharing this, because to really be clear on when, to say, oh, an employee needs services for an older parent, sometimes that's lumped in and it's not always really clear. So we have one category called listening support and problem solving. And within that, there's probably a lot of conversations happening about taking care of a loved one, or handling, navigating health services, or just getting some support and coming up with a plan. And sometimes listening is the service that can help someone with their plan. So it's hard to pull that apart. So does anyone have any questions about what we saw with, going back to January 2023 to date? This is what we were able to see as the kinds of referrals and ways that we're able to support employees. That said, oftentimes there aren't enough resources, or there aren't enough caregivers, or there are additional challenges that can, barriers that can come up. With that context, I'm gonna introduce Christine and Diane so that they can have some more conversation about this problem, the challenge, right? And share with you sort of the different aspects about what's happening in Vermont right now. So Christine, I'm gonna stop sharing and just hand it over to you, so you can share some of your perspective on the challenge and the challenge ahead, and maybe we can land on conversation on what can we do? What can we do about this?
Great. Hello, everyone. It's so fantastic to see you all. I wish we could have a chance to just come off camera and say hi at some point, but maybe we'll do that throughout the time. I don't want to waste a lot of time on me yet, or just further introducing myself. What I will say is that I've been working on the adult caregiver needs for most of my adult life. When I was an undergrad in college, I cared for my grandmother who had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I was with her up until the day and the moment that she died. And that set off sort of my journey of understanding the needs of caregivers who are caring for an adult. My master's thesis was on estimating the value of an adult female caregiver's time caring for an elder in the home. That supported the choices for care policy that we have here in Vermont in terms of paying family caregivers and informal caregivers to support their loved ones in the home versus a payment to care for individuals in facility-based settings. I'm going to turn it over to Diane. Diane's, I think, going to tell a story that will help set the stage for this conversation. I'm going to then share a couple of statistics that help just frame the scale and scope of this problem, and then we're going to jump into the conversation. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you, Christine, and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My role at Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice is as the palliative and complex care coordinator. And in that role, I had the opportunity to work with patients, but also the caregivers who support those patients. So I'd like to just share a brief case study, really, of a relatable situation from the caregiver perspective, but I believe also as employers and human resource departments, I think it will relate very much to whom you're working with. So the case that I would like to share is an example of a executive who is in the prime of their career. They live here in Vermont, and their parents have returned to the state of Vermont after being down south trying to do retirement for a couple of years to be closer to their son as they realized that their health was declining. So this gentleman is on task, has huge responsibilities. He travels quite often, but he needs to make himself available for his ailing mother as her DPOA, and also the father, who's the caregiver in the house. And by support, what I'm referring to is he's available for telephone calls to the PCP, to our team from Home Health Hospice, our nurse, our OT, our community health worker, who is going in almost daily to assist this case in this scenario. There have been a few emergency department trips for this patient, and in such of recent, the son had actually just barely landed on the other side of the country to show up for work and was immediately called back. So we can relate to that moment. Here we have a huge presentation, and now our employee is not available to do that. That compounded by travel back to Vermont. What ultimately happened in this situation is any extreme procedures were not going to increase the quality of life for this particular person. So we've shifted to how to provide that quality of care, which involves meetings with Dale, long-term care coordinators, applications, meeting with the father and the mother, reinforcing that DPOA, the documents, calling in all the data that we need. For this particular employee, this is really reflecting about 16 to 18 hours of his 8 to 5 work day, which, as we know, has an impact on him, his quality of work, and has an impact on the agency that he is employed by. So I think, what is it that we're able to do to accommodate our employee, help them show up in their strongest capacity, while also honoring their ability to be human and compassionate and loving of the family that is probably the reason that they show up to work, right? It is their why. So what I'd like to share is that in this particular situation, there are a team of individuals who are supporting both the patient, the spouse who's in the home with the patient, and then the son as the DPOA to assist with all of the paperwork that he's responsible to take care of. I think as a group of collaborators, it's important for us to identify really the challenge of that employee, what their driving forces to be available, the emotional and social conflicts that they have in being available to their family and also being available to their work environment. So thank you for listening to that story. And with that, I'd love to hand the baton back to Christine to talk about some of the demographics and data.
Thank you, Diane. So you can see, I'm sure some of that resonates with you, maybe personally or as employers and what you're seeing. So when we look at the numbers, I'm just gonna share, so bear with me. Here we go. Is that appearing properly? Okay. So this is a big part of the pressure that we're feeling, and I'm sure you feel this pressure in many ways. But when you look at the 2020 Vermont population distribution, and this slide credit goes to the Vermont Futures Project, who has been sharing the slide through roadshows across Vermont. You can see that the number of births in Vermont is quite low, and so we see a low fertility rate in the US. So we see that there's not a lot of young people being born into Vermont. This bump here for the 15 to 24-year-olds, the census data does include college students, and we have a number of fairly significant sized colleges and universities. So this is a little bit of an artificial look, those light green bars. What's really important is look at the size of these darker green bars, 25 to 49 years old. This is a smaller segment of the population than the population that comes after it. And the direction and trajectory of that population is actually declining. Individuals in this bracket of age cohort are leaving the state. And so we're seeing a number of individuals in that group leave, and then that population size is getting smaller. And then we see the largest chunk of the population really spiking at that 60 to 64 years of age. And this is where the need is beginning to put a lot of pressure on us. And we don't have the caregivers or individuals coming behind this population to provide the services, the healthcare, the support that's needed as these individuals age. So people are living longer. They are sicker in many ways, carrying multiple chronic illnesses, having some high needs. And many of Vermont's policies are age in place. And so we have a lot of individuals either living alone or needing care in a home-based environment. And it's usually that care is predominantly provided by family members and friends or informal caregivers. So then if we look at what is pressure on this and creating even more pressure for individuals living in their homes, let me orient you to this slide. So across the bottom, each bar chart recognizes or is a county in Vermont. And what's provided here is the number of nursing home beds, which include short-term rehab and long-term care beds that are in a qualified designated nursing home. The number of beds per 1,000 population, 65 and older for that county. And then the thick bar going across the top is the national ratio of utilization for beds per 1,000 people over the age of 65 for rural counties. And so you can see that we clearly do not have a sufficient amount of nursing home beds in most of our counties. In some of our counties, we have 0. So keeping somebody close to home becomes extremely difficult. The Bennington number is a high number. It's just a concentration of a larger space there. But we see this gap, this enormous gap in the number of facilities we need, which means that individuals are taking on a disproportionate burden of care when aging in place at home or staying at home for a longer period of time may not be the best option for an individual because there's long wait lists and there isn't a place to go. So I'm going to stop sharing. So that just gives you a sense of, the scope and scale of the problem. Just really quickly, we also know that nationally, 13 or 14%, between 13 and 14% of persons aged 75 and older cannot afford assisted living or long-term residential care without fully draining all of their assets. And they cannot afford a home care visit paid privately. I'm sorry, only 13 to 14% can afford those things. So the majority of the population, so let me restate that, 13 to 14% can afford those things. So the majority of folks do not have the financial resources to pay for assisted living or private home care.
Christine.
So we wanted to start the conversation with just an open-ended question to all of you. And that is, what do you notice is the impact of adult caregiving on your employees?
So I can share a little post instead of prelude, like the post story. This gentleman who's taking care of his parents, they probably could pay for a rehabilitation bed. However, in order to get the parents transferred closer to the son, they are required to have long-term care by the rehabilitation therapy setting. They will not accept the family unless they have long-term care. And in order to qualify for that, they in fact would have to spend down any of the savings they have. The paradigm is difficult when only one parent needs to go into a rehab. So how then do they provide assistance for the father to continue to live independently? So that's just another example of not being able to gain access to the beds that might be available. And as we understand, we have 800 to 1,000 that aren't available to have those spaces. So just an example. What might you be seeing?
Kristen, I see your hand. Would you like to?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Caney. I am a resource coordinator with Working Bridges. And I have, I'm in a unique position because I've helped many employees with trying to access supports for their aging parents. And I'm also one of those employees myself who's trying to help my.
Kristen, you got muted there.
Sorry about that. So I don't know if you heard, I assist employees who are trying to find resources for their aging parents. And I'm also an employee caring for my aging mother, who is in assisted living, luckily. However, one thing I'd like to put out there for myself and for other employees, where the parents do not want help, they don't understand that they do need assistance. So the mental health supports, if there could be more support groups for caregivers around the state, that would be fantastic. But the employees that I'm assisting, they were put in the, well, she was put in the place of her parents had to spend down in order to access supports. Parents were on nursing home wait lists. There was one available from Chittenden County all the way in Bennington County. That was it. Working, they would not be able to visit that often. So just really stressed beyond belief, actually had to step down from her job in order to care for both of her parents, actually. So trying to get in-home supports didn't quite work out. I don't entirely understand why. It may have had to do with finances. Parents also not wanting support, trying to get into daycares for adult daycare, waiting lists, just one challenge after another to try to help employees maintain their own jobs while helping their parents. So those are some examples as well, ones that I've had to support people in.
Thanks for sharing that, Kristen. Have any of our, so for our HR partners, can you speak to any situations you've seen in your workplace or in your lives? I'd like to hear what your, how do you see caregiving come out in your day? Where is that coming out? Or how have you responded? Monica, go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm Monica Urquhart. I'm the Chief Equity People and Culture Officer at the Vermont Food Bank, and also happen to be a nurse that worked at CVMC for 15 years. So I kind of understand both sides of this, and you know what we've tried to do at the food bank, and I was very fortunate to walk into this circumstance, is we have a full paid family leave. So it's not reliant on FMLA, but when folks have caregiver duties that they need to take care of, we are able to support them through that and give them the time that they need. One of the things that's really hard is the same with childcare, is that it's hard to do both at the same time. You really can't, do your job remotely and also care for someone else in the way that you really want to do it fully. And so you end up being stretched in both circumstances. And so what we really try to do is to give that time to our staff so that they can be fully present to their family members. And that in turn decreases the stress that they're feeling themselves. I know that we are very fortunate to be able to do that at the food bank, and that a lot of employment situations are pretty strapped for resources across the board. But I think that whatever organizations can do to provide that support for employees is a really, really good investment in the short term and the long term.
Thanks, Monica. Do others have reflections or things that you're seeing like with your employees? I see a hand. Jennifer, that's a real hand you're using.
Yeah, sorry. I haven't used Zoom in like a year, so I'm like, I don't even know how to raise my hand right now. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Jennifer Archambault. I am the director of HR at Home Health and Hospice, and have the privilege of working with Christine. And I think I have two pieces. One, personally, having taken care of my husband's grandmother, you know, I was in a very privileged position that I could take a leave of absence, and that I had an employer that would allow me to take a leave of absence, even though from a regulatory perspective, I didn't qualify because it was my husband's grandmother, not my own grandmother. And so I was very, very privileged to be able to do that. But I think I hold that when we're dealing with employees, to not be so hard and fast, right, with the rules, and making sure that we're allowing people and acknowledging their humanity and making adjustments as we need to, so that they can do what they need to do. I think for us, it's, or any of us that are working in healthcare, it's a double whammy. Because the majority of our population are caregivers. They're taking care of people every single day. And then they also get to go home and do it. And so I think a lot about what is the emotional labor that our employees, because we're expecting them to show up every day and smile and be kind and be patient and compassionate. How do we help them do that day in and day out, without getting burnt out, without, you know, the exhaustion of having to have this emotional labor, both at work and at home. And so we really try to create an environment where people can have the resources that they need to be able to have those conversations, whether it's EAP, we've just expanded network-wide our EAP services, working bridges, and really having a leadership team and a management team that is really in tune with the needs of their teams. It doesn't solve all of it, but I think just even recognizing it is huge. And then Monica, as you said, I think, you know, we are as a network trying to move towards some sort of a paid leave, so that our marginalized communities and employee population have better, greater access to take a leave. You know, it's awesome for everybody, but we know that there are differences in what people can access and what they can't access based on their socioeconomic background or whatever, however they identify. Unfortunately, these things are all tied with, you know, how many hours you work, what, are you married? That gives you access to other things that it might not if you were not. So just trying to create more equitable systems and processes also, so that people can get what they need. And there has to be system-wide solutions, right? It's one employee at a time, but there also has to be system-wide solutions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Blair, I see your hand.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Blair, and I'm a resource coordinator in the Central Vermont area. And I just wanted to share just a different perspective from some people that I've worked with, in addition to everything that we've heard and what Kristen really highlighted. In addition to that, people in this age group that are caring for their parents often have young children. So they're caring for children themselves and their parents. And another thing that I've run into a couple times is when they've been fortunate enough to get like a nursing home or some sort of bed for their parents, they're often stuck with cleaning out the house and the selling of the home, and just another added layer that I wanted to share that I've seen with quite a few families.
Blair, real quick off of that, I was talking with Kit yesterday, and we were talking about how when we work with employees around childcare, there's a language for that. Like there's a comfort in being able to talk about childcare for some reason. But I think there's still a lot of stigma and challenge around talking about how we're taking care of our parents or our older Vermonters, like how, and that it's not a, I don't know that we don't like to think about that side of the equation, right? We don't like to talk
Yeah.
about as we get older. It's just culturally hard for us to kind of have the language to talk about that. So it's an interesting dynamic when you think of caregiving, when you're having the conversations, like what are the barriers to being able to come forward and say, I think I'm going to need some help taking care of my family. And that can be hard
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
say. On you, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Christine, I have a question, and it's more around who this impacts gender-wise most. And is it the female workforce? I'm going to assume, maybe it's not, surprise me, but that this is, yet again, another layer of the female workforce having to make those decisions of staying in work or bowing out to care for children or care for their own parents or both. And what is the financial impact on women in the workplace? We saw the huge hit that the pandemic took when women had to step out of the workplace and be home for children. And the level of just loss in their career advancement, monetary advancement. I'd love to see some data around what is that and how do you recognize that this is a gender workforce issue? Not to say men don't do this, but how do we really make sure that we are providing equitable pay for women that are doing the work and decreasing the burden on our healthcare system?
Ooh, Tanya, there's a lot to unpack in there.
Sorry.
You raised a number of really important factors. And actually, that's why when I did my master's research, I actually did, I looked at two countries. I looked at the United States and Germany to see what another system did. I'll really quickly just give you the short answer to that. Germany does much better, and that's because their social fabric, their social supports are much stronger. And when I say social supports, I mean things like housing, food assistance, support in the home. That's all embedded as part of their system of care. So for us, we're much more in a capitalistic economy, and so it's much more focused on the medical system, and we're a little lower on sort of reinforcing and funding those social supports. So that's where we're seeing this. So a lot of times the needs of the adult are not medical needs. They are just their living needs. They're helping getting dressed, keeping them safe, getting them to and from the bathroom, making sure that they eat healthy, all of those types of things. This absolutely does disproportionately impact the female workforce. And you're 100% right. When we see the female workforce cut back on hours or leave the workforce entirely, not only are they impacting their financial well-being, as well as their, psychosocial and career well-being, in the moment, that pushes out. They are not contributing as much to their Social Security. They're not contributing to retirement. They're not contributing to their savings. So all of this, now that pushes them out, and we create this problem then again, because as they age, they don't have those resources either. And so we keep sustaining that problem by pulling on the resources of now to pay for those needs now for the future workforce, that future generation. And then we see that same problem one generation later. So important things, one of the things that we've noticed in our own organization is really, really emphasizing and highlighting retirement contributions, and retirement planning for all of our staff. At HHH, we are, Jennifer can correct me afterwards or stick it in the chat, I want to say between 84 and 86% female. And so, we are very, very aware of that. So it absolutely does impact in many, many ways the female population in a disproportionate way.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, those are really good points.
I want to move us maybe to the next question. We had another question. So these stories, I have to say, I've gotten goosebumps, and you're all hitting on exactly the elements that we know exist. And if you see me looking over here or typing, I'm keeping notes, and I have another screen. So I guess I really loved, I think it was Kristen, somebody touched on more support for caregivers across the state. That support could look like technical support, sort of maybe legal advice, financial advice, also the mental health focus. How do you, everybody, all of us will lose our parents. All of us will lose our parents. But I've never, whenever I encounter, I write in my work as somebody who leads a hospice, I write a lot of sympathy cards. And when people lose their parents, I want to say, like, there's got to be a resource, there's got to be a way. But why does it feel like we keep doing this by ourselves? It really feels like each one of us are going through it, and we're doing it by ourselves. So what could that look like? What could the mental health support look like? How could we prepare people for that journey? And everyone's family is different. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm not trying to be overly typical in my definition of parent. Whatever definition of parent is for you, then that can look really different. But one of the questions we had is, what could you envision? This is a magic wand question. What could you envision to meet as an employer, your needs as an employer, and your employees' needs when facing this process and acting as a caregiver, whether they're full-time caregivers and working, or if they're managing something just, day to day and it's really intermittent? What does that look like for you? I don't know if I should call on you, Kristen, but you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Okay, sure. Well, I'll give an example. At United Way, about 6 of us are in that caring for elderly parents. I don't know if a few of us also have kids that we are supporting as well. But what we've done informally is we have a little chat group on Teams, and whenever one of us deals with something particularly challenging, we put it in the chat and we give each other support. That's very informal. However, I would also suggest even having luncheons, even if it's just once a month. The acknowledgement of the difficulty goes beyond words. Just being acknowledged and seen is so huge for people.
I'm certain that some of you have other experiences or ideas that are out there. Maybe putting them in the chat if saying them out loud is hard.
Christine, in Lakeview conference room, we've got a real live hand happening.
Oh, okay.
There's a real arm and hand there.
So sorry, I didn't see that.
You mentioned the magic wand, and if I could wave it, I would love for all of our society to normalize conversations both around mental health and around grieving. I personally, I lost my first husband at the age of 35 and felt very much alone in that until I was able to connect with some other folks that had lost spouses, and then other people that had lost spouses, not through death, but actually through divorce. And then I also joined a grief support group. But again, like you said, we are all going to lose our parents. We are all going to have somebody close to us that is going to die. Again, having just gone through, a pandemic where there were so many deaths, I would have thought or would have hoped that would have helped normalize that conversation. But again, it hasn't progressed as much as I would like. But again, that would be the magic wand that I would wave.
Wow, I love touching on grief. There's another touch on this that I think Kristen was touching on in, I think Vivek Murthy, I never know how to say his name, they are, somebody help me. He's like the country's doctor.
Surgeon General.
Surgeon General. Thank you. Thank you.
The country's doctor.
It's like, I feel like I'm playing catchphrase. He named loneliness as a crisis, right? And I think that that's something that happens as being a caregiver of an adult is this feeling of loneliness. And I'm hearing, sorry, I don't know your name, the individual who shared in the Lakeview conference room.
Virginia.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Virginia Finn. I'm one of the resource coordinators.
Thank you, Virginia. So I think that that's exactly right. And so there's the isolation and the loneliness factor. And then what comes so closely on the heels of that or next to that is grief. And boy, we have a lot to process around grief in terms of things that we've lost, not just people, but senses of safety where we used to feel safe and maybe we don't feel that anymore. And so absolutely, I think that's something that's really critical. Yeah, I know this hand. This is Marita.
Hi, I'm Marita Martin. I'm an HR business partner here at Home Health and Hospice. As this discussion is going in this direction, I just wanted to offer, I had read a book called The Collective Regrets of Clover in preparation for moving to Home Health and Hospice in April when I came on board the team. And it is a story about a death doula. And one of the things that she mentioned was death cafes, which are a thing. That people get together and have conversations about death, about mourning and grief. And if you are local at the Oddfellows in the New North End of Burlington, they have had death cafes that pop up. So I just wanted to mention that and if you're not familiar with the Oddfellows, mention one of their tenants, I guess, I'm not an odd fellow myself, is to bury the dead. So they assist people with the costs of burials. So this is very much on their brand.
Thank you, Marita, for that. I am familiar with those. They started in Europe, I believe, and the European culture is a little bit ahead on this with us. Hospice was really, and the care for the dying was really established by Dame Cicely Saunders in the UK, and so they have this approach, and I think we can learn a lot from that. I'll ask a more pointed question. Is there any, oh, Connie, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't just want to jump in, but I don't, it's a question. Does anyone remember Dale's website, Rewarding Work? Years ago, they had a site where if you wanted to be a personal care attendant or caregiver, you could sign up and then people could search that database to find a caregiver or someone who could provide in-home support for a loved one. These were PCAs mostly, I think, or people who had some care attendant experience, who could be, I feel like that went away, but it was a place, I realized sometimes the challenge of finding other people who are caregivers or who know how to take care for even in the short term. You know, if an employee could have respite care, it's interesting. Sometimes employees will get funds for respite care, but they can't find a person to help them. And the irony of it is, you know, there are times where I think of my colleagues who are dealing with this, and I see like how strong they are together, that the sharing that can happen, they could provide care and support to each other, right? Like that there's this, it's not like we're going to get new people into Vermont who are suddenly going to be caregivers, but if people who are already providing care had a place to go where they could find others who are offering exchanges, or exchange of time, resource, connection, a way of like bringing Vermonters who are working Vermonters together, who have to manage these complex roles that they have. I'm not making this up. I swear it was a thing. It was called Rewarding Work. It was a regional thing that the state had contracted with some website to host. Sometimes people would get paid for their service through ERIS as like a part of like funding from the state. Like, so for some people who were eligible, they could get so much money to help with care, whether they were people with disabilities or people with medical needs. I know I'm not making this up, but y'all looking at me like I am. But I feel like it wasn't a bad idea, but it went away. And there was something about the idea of like connecting people in that way that I miss. I miss that resource. I feel like that was helpful. And I don't know why it went away. Not sure how it even was sustained at the time that it was. It was kind of around the time when we were talking more about money follows the person. And
Okay.
there was some funding that helped people to age in place, or to be able to take care of people in their own homes. And I think that was probably a resource that came up around that time.
Yeah, I think we can look into that and see if we can find out information and see if there's something that we can learn, and maybe understanding why it went away. Like what was the what was the thing that happened?
Like Dale owned it. Like I think Dale was responsible.
Okay.
So we could
Okay.
research that more.
So I just want to summarize. I recognize we're getting to the end of our hour with all of you. Really encourage you to just, like, if you have thoughts or you want to react to something someone said, to just put it in the chat, or feel free to share and raise your hand. But I think I am a little bit, I found this really interesting. My takeaway here, and I'd love to hear Diane's, is I think when we were prepping for this, we were thinking about like, oh, there's going to be like requests or thoughts around, more caregiver support or more programs to take care of others. I'm not hearing that come through at all. I'm hearing that it's not that we want to not necessarily continue to care. It's that we need a little bit of help, and we need to do this in solidarity. And we need to do this with support around our mental health and what this looks like. And we could use a little bit of help with some of the hard stuff. But no one has said, like, we need a place for these older persons to go. Like, no one has said, like, we need, more nursing home beds. What's the problem there? And so, like, I was really prepared to be able to say, like, yes, okay, well, prepare and set expectations around the number of beds that we need. It's probably not going to happen. So we're in this for a little while. But I'm really seeing a very different approach here, which is really interesting. And I also think very, very possible. So Diane, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. I appreciate that. One of the things that I was thinking about as we were talking about emotions and grieving, there are many opportunities for pre-anticipatory grieving that are offered within the community, but I think bringing attention to those services through the HR departments, pointing direction to our Working Bridges colleagues that are in our offices can be really helpful. Starting to really normalize those conversations around the social determinants of health. I'm just looking on my computer right now for a case study that I have that links some of the data. Studies now show that a patient's access to their health care is directly reliant on their social determinants of health. The statistic is 70%. So what that really looks like is if patients and families don't have access to transportation or housing or food or emotional stability, they're less likely to attend their primary care appointment. So I love that we're initiating this conversation. I appreciate that some folks started to talk a little bit more about support groups and connection, right? Because we know that connection is at the root of joy, happiness, and functionality. So I would encourage additional conversation on that, and would love to be a part of continuing this conversation moving forward. I think pulling that together and providing our teams, and many of our agencies and organizations have legislative partners that we can share our conversation with, and continue to see if we can't influence positivity within our healthcare systems and our families.
That was really beautiful. Connie, I want to turn it back to you to just talk about next steps and closing.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Diane. Thank you to all of you who could be here today to prioritize this conversation. And I think as you go back to the workday, I hope you'll noodle on this more and consider, really look for it in your workforce. Maybe even have some conversations with your colleagues and your teams to understand their perspective too. Like, ask your teams, inquire, and try to understand, like, what are those questions and needs that are related to caregiver support. I'll be sending a follow-up email with a recording, as well as any information if you'd like to connect with Christine and Diane further, or if you'd like to connect with your team, you can speak with your resource coordinator and certainly get more information about specific referrals or community resources. If you want to highlight or elevate those resources, we'll certainly be happy to provide information about the services and supports that exist. But also look forward to continuing this conversation as if this really touches a very specific need you're seeing. Would love to keep talking about that with you. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, you got 3 minutes back in your day. Go get it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
Nice to see everybody.
Bye-bye.